So at this point, some of you really astute students, or really curious students, you might be wondering, well, hey, wait a minute. We've been using these less than signs, these slashes and greater than signs, to describe an HTML tag. Then how do we actually do them inside of HTML? What if we wanted to say, for example, 2 less than 3? Notice this red text that started appearing in our HTML. That means that there's an error somewhere. And note that less than 3 isn't really rendering in our browser. It's not showing up. How do you actually do a less than sign in HTML? Well, it turns out we just ran into one of the HTML reserved characters. This brings us to an interesting point, that we can also do special characters in HTML. So let's continue here and say, hey browser, let me tell you a bit more about HTML. We can also do special characters inside HTML. Now inside a new paragraph, we're going to say, for example, to do a less than sign, we need to enclose it inside. Now here's where the tricky syntax comes in. We start with an ampersand, and now here brackets is giving us some suggestions. So we could go down through brackets as suggestions until we find the less than sign, but notice how this starts at A, and then we have to keep going down and down and down and down. The special character for a less than is LT, and then a semicolon. Now, it turns out ampersand, this ampersand right here, is another reserved character. And to do an ampersand, we say and and there we go. Brackets is giving us a suggestion of an ampersand. So I'm just going to press enter. And so now here we have some text that looks fine on our HTML page. For example, to do a less than sign, we need to enclose it inside an ampersand followed by its special HTML character map. Finally, ended by a semicolon. So note that semicolon is not one of the special characters. The most commonly used characters, like semicolon, colon, are actually not part of the reserved characters in HTML. There are a few. There's an ampersand, the less than sign, the greater than sign, but you really won't run into them too often. Now there is one more special character that I want to talk a little bit about. You won't run into this too often, but when you do, and if you do, it's just going to give you the biggest headache. So I want to talk a little bit about the non-breaking space. And what I mean by the non-breaking space is that it's a space that actually appears as a space in HTML. One of the weird quirks of HTML is we ran into, after doing the break tag, note that the break tag just creates a new line. And some of you English geeks might know that there are two ways to really create a paragraph. One is the multi-line paragraph, which is how we've been doing them so far. But another way is to have a separate line and then have the next line be indented a little bit. So if we wanted to create this into our own paragraph that's a more traditional paragraph where there's some indentation at the beginning, note that putting spaces in front doesn't really do anything. And if you want to create a paragraph style with spaces in front, it'll just give you the biggest headache, because HTML in some ways is actually not space sensitive. So the reason I bring up the non-breaking space is that we can use the non-breaking space to create that look of the more traditional paragraph. Note when I typed end, the ampersand, NBSP, non-breaking space, followed by the semicolon, it added a little bit of a space in front of the paragraph. So now we can just repeat this. I'm actually going to type it out just so that you have practice. End NBSP, end NBSP, and then end NBSP. 4 spaces is plenty. And then, again, for this next paragraph, end NBSP, end NBSP, end NBSP. Oh, fourth one, end NBSP. And again, finally, end NBSP, end NBSP, end NBSP, end NBSP. So now our HTML looks really nice, like a traditional paragraph, and this is looking pretty good now. So that's a little bit about special characters in HTML. If you want the full list of special characters, not only is brackets really good at giving you suggestions, notice that when I type in the ampersand, the first thing it does is give me some suggestions on special characters. So brackets has this built in. A lot of text editors also have this built in. So brackets should be enough of a resource on its own, but just a few common ones that I want to touch on. This time, I'm actually going to create a new paragraph, for real this time. Notice that previously I had combined the new paragraph into the old paragraph to show you the magic of a non-breaking space. This time I am going to create a new paragraph. Let's touch on a few special characters that you should probably know about. Greek letters are special characters, so Greek letters make great special characters. And you might be wondering, well, why would I need Greek letters? If you are in an academic background and want to type papers in HTML, we will touch on the academic uses of HTML in future lectures, but here's where sort of the foundation comes in too. So end, the ampersand, and then we have mu, we have lambda, we have delta is the most common one, and then there's also a capital delta. You might be wondering, well, delta is supposed to be a triangle, right? That's capital delta. So end and then capital D. Notice that's a triangle. So these are case sensitive. Keep that in mind. They are case sensitive. And other Greek characters make for great special characters. And you might be wondering, well, why would I use this instead of a word processor or something like that? Well, it turns out that one of the greatest benefits of using HTML is that it is cross-device compatible. So all of your, every single device has a web browser. So everything you create in HTML is going to be available and easily read on other devices too. And that's one of the greatest magics of HTML, and we are going to get much deeper into cross-browser formatting in this course, but that really won't be until the Bootstrap session. We will touch on it a little bit in the CSS, but that really won't be until the Bootstrap section. So at this point, I want to touch a little bit on what HTML really is. Frankly, doesn't really look like the prettiest web page ever, right? It doesn't really look that great. And so I want to tell you that HTML is not a styling language, meaning it's not used to make really pretty things. That's what CSS is for. HTML is a purely markup language. So it stands for hypertext markup language. So it is a pure markup language, meaning it's great for creating prototypes of your web pages, but is not the best language for making your web pages look pretty. That's what CSS is for. That's the lecture on special characters, and next time we're going to go into more HTML formatting. Even though HTML is not a styling language, it still has a lot of really neat formatting features that we will get into in the next lecture.